he can come to knowledge of God, and the God that he comes to knowledge of turns out to be Avicenna's God, remarkably. Because without revelation and without tradition, the only kind of God unassisted human reason can discover is this unmoved mover, this first cause, if you will. So he discovers what takes anyone else, revelation, all on his own. He also becomes morally sound. Now, the reason why I bring that up is I'm teaching Adam Smith's theory of moral sentiments. And he, like Rousseau and others, reject the idea that you can develop any moral qualities without a community. It's absolutely impossible. Anyway, what does this have to do with Rousseau and this period? Ibn Tufail's work is translated into Latin by John Locke's tutor. You guys know who John Locke is? Pretty remarkable. Takes Europe by storm. Around Locke's period, the book is even translated into Dutch. There were some rumors of who translated it, who knows. But there's a wonderful book. Anyone who's interested in this period should read Samer Atta's work on Ibn Tufail, the history of the way it got translated. Early American Puritans read it. And they loved the idea. Well, why would they love this story? What do you think would be, yes, sir?
For Protestant, right? Then this is going to be pretty compelling.
Why is it compelling?
Because then the individual has some sort of access to religious truth.
You got it. You got it. And that's, by the way, a very Islamic thinking, right? Islam does not have a papacy. So you can see why the early Protestants absolutely loved this. But do you see also how, when somebody like John Locke and others are reading this, they start to think about a state of nature teaching, where now they're all encouraged to jump into the bushes, if you will, and see where can we discover true human nature. The idea there is already a breakout of the Aristotelian notion that you can't study human beings unless you study what? What did Aristotle say human being is by nature? A political what? Political animal. That means it's literally part of the species to develop morally and politically through politics. And all of a sudden, this Islamic thinker comes along and says, okay, you've missed the boat. If you truly want to understand what a human being is, you have to take away all of the social garbage that gets foisted onto him. You have to go right to the heart. Now, obviously, it's a thought experiment. Nobody, with the exception of myself, was spontaneously generated. But it is a thought experiment. It helps you to put sort of a possibility out there of what might it look like if human beings had no tradition, such as it is. Now, Smith, in the Theory of Moral Sentiments, has passages where he actually says, now suppose somebody was born spontaneously on an island. So this is up in the air. It's in the air. People are reading it, thinking about it. He says, I disagree with anyone who says that such a person can come to any moral qualities. Haya does. Haya almost becomes an ascetic, becomes a devotee of this God. He has a mystical union. And Smith says, impossible. Such a being, born with no contact with human beings, could never develop any moral character. Because for Smith, you require the impartial spectator, you require some social interaction, and that's how you learn right and wrong, through that kind of trial and error. It's not this intuitionist way of receiving knowledge. It's not through reason. Okay. So what happens? This period that sort of ends around 1204. These are obviously somewhat arbitrary dates, but something does in fact take place that not only gives birth to Khalbun thought, it's actually quite important to understand his work. The Mongol period after the sack of Baghdad rocks, as you can imagine, the Islamic world. What happens? Well, clearly, there's a change of guard. Over time, they adopt Islam. But then, what happens to Islam around the time of Khalbun? Does anyone know? So you have this guy, Tamerlane, 1336 to 1405. He becomes sort of the successor of the Mongol Empire that was established way back when the Golden Age comes to an end around 1258. It rocks the world, as you can imagine. What would you think if the country that you know and love was completely conquered by a foreigner? What would you think? How would you start looking at events in history? What do you think? Absolutely. Absolutely. It's so over everything you know and love and trusted in and believed was the foundation of your being, gone. How do we, Now forget this lecture. How do you look at massive historical events? Like when you want to try to understand a massive event, okay, a massive attack on a country, a massive decline, a rise, a spectacular crash.
Is it pre and post?
What are you thinking of?
Yeah, anything like AD and BC and
Yeah, well, like for example, if anyone here familiar with the Augustan city of God? Professor Johnston has some great lectures on it. When there's a massive change of guard in history, don't people? I'm sorry. Well, yeah, you're immediately thinking, what effect? What is the cause to this effect? Now, the reason why I put this up here is because I want to be helpful for you in terms of how to approach Khalil. You're going to see a lot of scholarship out there that tries to compare him to the sociologists out there. Maybe he's like Montesquieu or Kant, or maybe he's like Thucydides. And I want to try to situate this history a little bit. I think it is helpful to kind of make those connections, but just take a breather and think about just how we understand history. How do Americans understand history? When you take a history class, are you given sort of economic causes to events? Are you given, what kind of causes? Yes, sir.
Some war periods.
So you see, military is military the force behind history? What did Thucydides say?
It's conflict.
Absolutely, it's conflict, and it's conflict rooted in military.
Yeah.
Anyone familiar with Machiavelli's discourses on living? He says there's only one sin: military sins. Okay, so you either have arms or you don't have arms. Okay, so there's a military history. Could you understand the events of 9/11 in terms of military history? Can you try to understand it in terms of economics? Is there an aspect of a commercial republic to reduce all history to economics? Right? Thucydides doesn't write, for example, in economic history. He makes it very clear he's writing military political history and the story. He's aware of the importance of economics. He knows that, but he doesn't think they're the driving force. And we want to know, what is the driving force? We've just witnessed our beloved homeland completely go. It's gone. We want to know what was the force behind it. Do we look at history in terms of social history? The interactions of social groups? Race, class, gender? Sure. What's interesting is there's one missing. Did it cross anyone's mind here that God is the force behind history? Say a tsunami hits, do you think he's angry? Somebody messed up. Do people look at history with God as the prime force behind it? In the South? No. And where else? Not just the South. Who else looks at world events and thinks, okay, the force behind it is not military, it's not economic, it's not social? Sorry?
Middle East, I guess. I'd say more so and less. If we go through Dr. Chip's class, we learn more and more of the religious aspects that go into their culture.
Right. And what's interesting is when you put these up on the board, you now start to realize how we look at history. If you're already not even thinking, oh, history, I know the force behind history. It's God and his prophets. How many of you feel comfortable in an American audience making that argument? Say a massive plague happens. And you're like, sit down, I've got somebody offended Jesus. Do some people believe that? Why don't we? Why is that comical for us? Sir?
I mean, following the Enlightenment, I would say that following the Enlightenment, I'd say that rational thought dictates that there's other means that we can actually observe that cause these things. Like,
What is your name?
Mark.
Mark. Excellent. Did everybody hear Mark? Because we are thinking that there has to be some rational cause. Now, what are you already saying about God?
That he's irrational.
Yeah, that he's either irrational or beyond the grasp of reason, right? Something like that is taking place in the Muqaddimah. Ibn Khalbun wants to understand what is it that is behind the change of guards in history, massive changes in history. Is it military? Is it economic? And or what is it? Does anyone have any familiarity at all with Ibn Khalbun? You can just any thoughts? No.
I think he's one of the greatest Islamic philosophers because
Yes.
Islamic.
What is the principle that he argues is behind?
Yeah, what you just said, I guess the massive change in history and the civilizations.
Yeah, it's this word right here, asabiya. Anyone know Arabic? My sister, you know Arabic? Asabiya. What does it mean? It does mean, yep, it means spirited, doesn't it? Angry. People don't know how to translate this word unless you're Arabic, and you immediately see it when our moms and dads would say, "Hada asabi." What does that mean? He's very angry, right? So it gets translated as group solidarity. Now, doesn't that sound like a team sport? Like the Harvard crew team? Like, look at that, asabiya. It doesn't capture at all what Ibn Khalbun is talking about. Ibn Khalbun thinks that the motor, the force behind history, is this group solidarity, but it manifests itself in blood ties, tribal ties, where people are willing to kill and sacrifice for their tribe, asabi. And he thinks that fundamentally, the rise and fall of civilizations can be measured by the strength of the group solidarity in question. The second the Romans grew too big and they lost that sense of solidarity, what happened to the Romans? What happened? You know? And what happened? And so he wants to understand, well, what is it that is politics then just purely Machiavellian? You either have arms or you don't have arms. Is it just a dog-eat-dog world of predators? Khalbun introduces this term and says, well, not really. There's a character in humans that you can find in tribal desert culture that he argues is the foundation of civilization, the foundation of it. Completely different from any of the Enlightenment thinking. The Enlightenment thinking wants nothing to do with tribalism. That's where you get the individual rights of man and woman. This is different. This is, we are tribes, and human beings are tribal. And the more asabi the tribe is, the more that solidarity holds it together and it can withstand any external and internal threat. When the United States loses its sense of asabiya, you're in decline. You don't feel that you belong in it. It's too divided. To whom do you owe your loyalty? And so this is what he puts on the table, and he says, now watch, is this true? Now, he says there's one other thing that transforms asabiya so it no longer even is needed. Does anyone know what that might be? What? So let's just say there's 4 tribes right in here. And our tribe is our tribe. Now, you have to understand, when Khalil uses this, he doesn't say it in a disparaging term. He's saying these are the fundamental building blocks of civilization, period. People voluntarily associate with their own. Anyone who disassociates, you got to have some transcendent tribal identity that's going to coalesce you, or you're on your own, and you're going to be weakened and divided. What is the only thing you think? And I understand most of you have not read it, but I think I've given you everything you need to know to sort of puzzle it through. What might be the only transcendent identity that transcends the tribalism of the nomadic life and then unites us in even a bigger community, such that it creates a dynasty? Money? Who's got the money? That's the Smithian. Not money. Language? No. Allah. Islam. That's why you now see Salve. Submit. All are equal. What's the last surah say about? Do you know the last surah? Men, women, all races are all equal in the eyes of God. It's in Islam that you have the transcendent identity. However, here's what's really interesting about it. Islam could not have conquered and could not have been strong had it not been built on the constitutive elements that make up the tribal culture. And that's what we're going to develop today. How much time do I have? 50? 15. 1-5. See, I'm Lebanese. We take forever to make a point. I'm very sorry. Okay. But you look like you had a question.
I was just wondering, as we're going through all of this and thinking about history and thinking about what's happening now, how does the current discussion fit with what's happening with Pell?
I think that's an amazing question. Let me repeat it.